What happens when the EU pushes for $800 billion in new weapons, but its people demand peace instead? On April 5, 2025, Rome's streets were packed, not for a parade, but for a massive protest against the European Commission's proposed rearmament plan. Thousands rallied, organized by Italy's five-star movement, to reject the $800 billion European Defense Industrial Strategy, EDIS, championed by Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Protesters waved blue EU flags, calling for diplomacy over militarization, arguing that sitting at a table is far cheaper than blowing one up. Critics warn that von der Leyen's plan chains Europe to endless war, prioritizing bombs over peace. Let's break this down in 6 steps, exploring the protests, the EU's strategy, and what this clash means for global stability. No fluff, just real insights to help you navigate this critical moment. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Rome's Rebellion Against Rearmament. On April 5, 2025, tens of thousands of Italians took to the streets of Rome in a powerful display of dissent, protesting the European Commission's $800 billion rearmament plan. Organized by the Five-Star Movement, the demonstration began at Piazza Vittorio and marched to the Fori Imperiali, filling Rome's central Piazza del Popolo with at least 30,000 people, according to AP News. Sources within the Five-Star Movement estimated attendance could have reached $100,000, describing the turnout as beyond all expectations, as reported by Euronews. Protesters condemned both Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's government and von der Leyen's EDIS, rejecting the EU's push for new weapons in favor of diplomatic solutions. The rally's message was clear: no to $800 billion in new weapons, yes to diplomacy. Demonstrators, waving blue EU flags, united across political divides in the name of democracy, as organizers stated. "We need hospitals, not missiles," one protester told Euronews, echoing a sentiment shared on X, where users emphasized that sitting at a table is cheaper than blowing one up. This protest wasn't an isolated event. A similar pro-Europe rally on March 15th in Rome, also drawing 30,000 people, had called for unity and diplomacy, highlighting growing public unease with the EU's militarization push. Numbered on Chapter 2. The EU's $800 billion defense strategy. The European Defense Industrial Strategy, EDIS, unveiled by Ursula von der Leyen in March 2024, aims to mobilize $800 billion for defense over the next 4 years, as part of the broader Rearm Europe One Readiness 20 program. The plan, detailed in a March 2025 white paper, seeks to bolster Europe's military-industrial complex by increasing national defense spending, pooling orders, and procuring equipment together. Von der Leyen announced the initiative alongside a $1.5 billion European Defense Industry Program, EDUP, to support joint procurement and stockpiling, with a focus on technologies like AI and quantum computing, as reported by Euronews on March 19, 2025. The Commission also proposed a European military sales mechanism to aggregate demand and a $150 billion fund for radars, air defense, missiles, and drones. The EDIS responds to growing security threats, particularly Russia's invasion of Ukraine and fears of a potential attack on an EU state by 2030, as warned by intelligence agencies. The EU aims to support Ukraine with military aid, having donated 500,000 artillery shells by April 2025, with plans for over 1 million by year-end, while preparing for worst-case scenarios through stockpiling and military mobility, per the European Commission's March 28 statement. However, the plan has sparked controversy, with critics arguing it prioritizes militarization over diplomacy, chaining Europe to a cycle of endless conflict rather than fostering peace. Chapter 3. The public's call for diplomacy. The Rome protests reflect a broader European sentiment. People want peace, not bombs. Demonstrators on April 5th demanded a shift toward diplomacy, arguing that the EU's $800 billion defense push risks trapping the bloc in perpetual conflict. "We are here to defend freedom and democracy," Daniela Condado told AP News during the March 15 pro-Europe rally, a sentiment echoed in April's protests. Critics on X emphasized that diplomacy is a cheaper, more sustainable path than militarization, with one user stating, "The EU wants bombs while people beg for peace," noting that Europe sold $298 billion in arms last year. This public outcry isn't new. The March 15 rally, initiated by Italian journalist Michele Serra, united 30,000 Italians under the slogan, "Here we make Europe, or we die," calling for cohesion and peace amid U.S.-Europe tensions over Ukraine and tariffs. Italy's Five-Star Movement, led by former Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, has been a vocal opponent of rearmament, condemning Meloni's government for aligning with von der Leyen's plan. Right-wing parties, however, snubbed the protests, standing behind Meloni, who has struggled to mediate between Trump and the EU, as noted by India Today. Chapter 4. Critics weigh in on the EDIS. Critics of the EDIS argue that it prioritizes war over peace, exacerbating global tensions. The Five-Star Movement and protesters in Rome warned that von der Leyen's plan chains Europe tighter to endless war, diverting resources from social needs like healthcare and education. "We need hospitals, not missiles," one protester told Euronews, a view shared across X, where users criticized the EU's $800 billion defense budget as a misstep when diplomacy could resolve conflicts more effectively. Some pointed out the EU's hypocrisy, noting its $298 billion in arms sales last year while claiming to champion peace. Analysts echo these concerns. Daniel Fiat, a professor at the Center for Security, Diplomacy, and Strategy in Brussels, told Euronews on February 10th that the EDIS must define how Europe responds if the U.S. reduces support for Ukraine, a scenario made urgent by Trump's decision to halt aid. Mi Rijo Terres highlighted the EU defense industry's fragmentation, noting that internal market rules don't apply and banks hesitate to lend to defense firms, per Euronews on February 10th. Without long-term funding, the EDIS risks failure, as the $1.5 billion DIP budget is insufficient. With hopes pinned on the EU's 2028 budget cycle, according to Carnegie Endowment on March 8th. Chapter 5. Geopolitical Implications. The clash between the EU's rearmament push and public calls for peace has significant geopolitical implications. The EDIS aims to reduce Europe's reliance on U.S. arms, with von der Leyen emphasizing the need to buy more European to strengthen the European defense industrial base, as stated on March 20th by Politico. This shift is driven by Russia's aggression and Trump's wavering commitment to European security, including his decision to halt aid to Ukraine, as noted by Euronews on March 5th. French Minister Benjamin Haddad told Euronews on March 14th that focusing on European defense industries is the only way for Europe to be autonomous, especially if U.S.-origin weapons are cut off. However, the protests signal a disconnect between EU leadership and its citizens, potentially weakening the bloc's unity. Italy's internal divisions, Meloni's right-wing government versus the Five-Star Movement, mirror broader EU tensions, as member states remain divided on how to finance and prioritize defense spending, per Euronews on February 2nd. Globally, the EU's militarization risks escalating tensions with Russia, which could exploit European divisions, while straining U.S.-EU relations amid Trump's tariff wars, as reported by Euronews on March 15th. The EDIS's focus on AI and drones also raises ethical questions about future warfare, complicating the EU's role as a global peacekeeper. Nadine Dabuisendradown. Chapter 6. A Divided Europe. At a crossroads. The Rome protests against the EU's $800 billion defense plan reveal a profound divide. While leaders like von der Leyen push for bombs to secure Europe's future, citizens demand peace through diplomacy, arguing it's a cheaper, more humane path. Critics warn that the EDIS chains Europe to endless conflict, diverting funds from social needs and escalating global tensions, especially with Russia and a wavering U.S. under Trump. Geopolitically, the EU risks internal fragmentation and strained alliances if it prioritizes militarization over unity, while its defense ambitions remain underfunded and contentious. Sitting at a table may indeed be cheaper than blowing one up, but for now, Europe stands at a crossroads, torn between the allure of military might and the public's plea for peace, with the path forward uncertain as the continent navigates an increasingly volatile world.